So, James, welcome to our wonderful podcast, and we're so glad to have you on board. Bit of a
Great to
coach,
be
are
here.
you? Bit of a coach, are you?
Oh, just a little bit, yeah. So a little bit of a coach here and there, sort of helping people to get through certain areas that they need to get through to help them grow themselves and their businesses. Yep.
You're definitely understating your role in life. I mean, your laneway is a specific profession. So, explain a little bit more about, how you got into the world of coaching. Maybe we should go back a few years because you're only a young boy, maybe 2 or 3
Yeah,
years.
like I'm using some great moisturizer at the moment. It's certainly shaved a few years off.
Yeah.
So yeah, the story goes back. Oh gosh, I mean, I've always been a sports fanatic and right into my exercise and so forth. And I thought I had an opportunity with sport, and a couple of injuries happened throughout school, and then so I studied sports science at school. I started my first business when I was 17 in the personal training space, while still at school, which was fun. I bought a first gymnasium with a buddy of mine we went to uni with, and we grew those gymnasiums and great accolades and great success in that area, and always interested in coaching. And I've always had a coach in my businesses, even to today. I've always had a coach helping me and guiding me and supporting me, keeping me accountable and so forth. And in 2008, I sold the business to my business partner at the time, and now I ventured off like, well, where to from here? Like, it was like a bit of a pivotal moment in my world, known as Mr. Fitness back then. And it's like, where to from here? And that sort of looked at the mastermind concept, and I ran a pilot program for 4 months with some great success, and went back and did some further studies. And that's when the journey really took off in relations to coaching. And particularly over the last number of years, it's been a focus to those within the real estate and property space, and helping them with the key areas of strategy, leadership, and also looking at themselves, developing their own personal development and their mindsets.
Yeah, you obviously had a bent for business as well. You weren't just a coach per se, and looking at improving mindsets. You had a successful gymnasium, couple.
Yep.
And you've obviously been a committed entrepreneur since then. How did you fall into the real estate laneway?
When I ran that mastermind group, after I sold the business, there was a couple of mates who I was their trainer, and they were part of the group, and they achieved some great success of some of the tools, some of the strategies that we did within that pilot program. And one of them said, mate, I love what you do. Can you bring some of that to our team? And he was my first coaching client, business coaching client, and he's still a client today. 12 years on, I'm still running their team building strategies. I'm working with the directors and on their strategy, working with the individual team members and working any blockages and mindset shifts around that. So that's where and from then it's just really been obviously referrals, and people going, so-and-so I just spoke to the other day. It was beautiful. I just got off the phone to someone the other day, and they said, someone said I need to call you. I don't know what you do, but they're just glowing with what you're helping them and how you're helping them. We need to talk. I went, okay, cool. Let's have a conversation. And that's what it's been like over the past 10 years.
Yeah, look, I mean, over the past 10 years, I take it you've had a great opportunity to look at the industry as an outsider looking in. What are some of the key points that you can summarize your observations with?
Oh, it's a really interesting. That's a really open-ended question. I love it because where do we go with this? Game one.
You can go anywhere. I guess what I'm trying to point to indirectly, and I'll be a little bit more direct, is what are the issues that you see most people in the real estate industry dealing with?
I think that there's two levels to that question. I think they're dealing with on a agent to client perspective. They're dealing with a lot more educated clientele out there at the moment. They're before an agent actually has a conversation to a potential vendor or landlord or buyer or tenant, they've done the research so much more into depth than 10 years ago. They've got the tools, they've got the services, they've got access to a wealth of information where it's just like, right, okay, this is what I want, this is how I want. And like, if the agent is not prepped for that, that can be quite a confronting kind of conversation. So the clients are more educated. On the other front so therefore what that means is the agent needs to build better relationships. That agent needs to build connecting relationships. You know, it's not about having that commission breath that we've heard so often, time and time again. It's about how do we deal and how do we build a relationship. I was speaking to a client the other day who's years and years of trying to get into this area, but he's only been talking about the market. I said, well, what do you know about them personally? He goes, nothing. I said, well, let's go personal. Let's find out where are they looking forward to traveling over the next little while as restrictions ease. What are their favorite restaurants? And funny enough, I saw him this morning. He goes, Shorty, you can't believe these conversations are next level. Like the feedback that I'm getting, it's like I'm actually finding out about the person and they're actually enjoying it. I said, yeah, exactly. And so agents are building those, need to be building those deeper connected relationships to really get any traction and any cuts through in the industry. The second component to that question is about themselves. And yes, we all know in relations to where they're perceived as the trusted advisor, and Barry's mentioned it many times before around looking at the past and looking at where they are in relations being the trusted advisor and where they are now. And I think that's an important component is how they are perceiving themselves, more importantly, out into the community. Are they too tied up into looking good, driving a flashy car and wearing a $1 million suit? Or are they more concerned about the client's needs, about how can they help to transition their clients to their next point of call within their property needs? And I think that's what I'm noticing is that those who are really based from that ego, yes, they might have a great success, but what's the depth of that success, and what's the fulfillment that they have within their own personal lives compared to buying the next toy? And I think they're the two components of that question.
Wonderful. I'm sure Barry has can really relate to what you just said. I mean, he talks about. Often talks about the disconnect that agents have with people, and it's I mean, not to be too esoteric and philosophical, but it's a disconnect with themselves as well as human beings.
So true.
That's a big part of it, George. I think that's how can you really connect with somebody else if you don't know who you really are and you're not really connected to who you authentically are, who you really are.
And often, as we do as human beings, we hide behind the trappings of success. The symbols, the car, the flashy suits, the money in the bank, and the big car, big house, and maybe a couple of girlfriends, and good-looking ones at that. In my case, not real.
Becomes very expensive.
It does. I think I mean, James, do you find that with your clients though, they have to go through that journey first? Do you find that, or do you find that you pick up someone starting off in real estate, and you do have the occasional person that you can chaperone from day one, or is it more a case of you've got to wait 20 years for them to get through the system and be burnt, bitter, and twisted?
I think in relations to that, it's the willingness of people wanting to work on themselves.
Yeah,
people who are willing to work on themselves don't have to go through the 20 years and being bitter and twisted. They can get it sooner rather than later. Yet I've also had the bitter and twisted go. I've got the toys, I've got the holidays, I've got this and this, and it's the materialistic stuff, but I'm still not fulfilled. I'm still not happy. And so that's a different type of conversation. So I think it's depending on where their person is at in their journey, but the biggest factor is the willingness. Are they willing to actually have a look in the mirror and work on themselves to progress and transcend through what we call their stuff, or peel back some of the layers, take off the masks, all the metaphors that you want to use to really have a look and go, what do I want to achieve and why? What's my purpose in relation to this? What do I want to leave behind as a legacy? Who do I want to be known for? And I think when we can start to pose those types of questions, it's a different type of agent that gets transformed into a bigger picture agent, into a bigger aspect of, all right, I'm ready to play a bigger game, but who's on the journey with me? And that's when the results will come through and they attract a different type of clientele. That's when magic starts to happen.
I mean, have you ever been able to do like an apples for apples comparison? I suppose you can't, but you can gauge previous performance to the new improved person's performance. And what have you seen? What kind of turnaround stories can you tell us?
It's, even though they've got some great business success, what I find is that they become more holistic. And so a classic example, just speaking to a client just the other week and looking at, okay, great, you're on track to hit your over your $1 million GCI this year, even through COVID, blah, 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 blah. And then we looked at all the other areas of life. He's on song with his training. His health is impeccable. He doesn't drink. He has the occasional coffees, but like he's training every day. His marriage is in sync. He's actually communicating with his partner. He's integrated with his kids. He's there for pickups and sometimes drop-offs. And so therefore, when you look at the holistic picture of that's where I see success. Not just, okay, cool, you've got the money in the bank and you may be working 80 hours a week and you're earning X amount, but it's looking at all those other areas of life because, you can be the richest man in the grave, but it's not really going to do you any justice. So looking at what does that health look like? What does those relationships look like? What do those experiences look like? And then how does that also then feed into the business? And I think that's the holistic aspect of those successes. And there's been a number of them.
Barry, how does that relate to you? Because I think you've got a story to share.
I can empathise that totally. I mean, that's three years ago. That my life was my marriage was falling apart, and I thought divorce was the only option. I remember I walked into my daughter's room at night to say goodnight to her, and she's just sitting there sobbing on a bed, and I was like, "What's going on, Elle?" And she says, "You're never home, Dad. You're always at work, and when you're here, you're arguing with Mum, and you're going to get divorced, and we're going to have to live in separate homes." And that ripped my heart out. I just thought, here I am doing personal development, running a business, doing my best to take care of everybody, and it wasn't enough, and I didn't know what else to do. That's where it became really, really challenging. And thankfully, I've got I've gone on quite a journey over the last 3 years, and now my marriage is actually better than it was when I first met my wife. Even in that honeymoon period, it's beautiful, and it doesn't mean it's perfect. We still have moments, but compared to what it was, it's just beautiful. And the kids' self-esteem's gone up, and loving work. It's just like the whole environment's amazing now. And I can really relate to what James is saying there. And it's great for those agents who step up and I guess take themselves on, because it does take courage to do that and reach out to somebody and show a bit of potential, what you might call weakness. But that's actually takes strength. That takes courage. And it's amazing. I'm sure James will be able to share all the stories of agents and what they experience on the other side of that, not just from a life connection perspective and connecting in communities, but with themselves as well, and also materially, what shows up. And what have you seen show up, James, from the agents that have gone through that to take themselves on, in their career?
Yeah, I mean, like I was speaking to a client the other day, and she said, like, over this COVID time, she's really gone within and had to look at, okay, what do I need to clean up in order to come out the other side even more powerful, more connected, more. It's like, whew, you go, girl. And through her meditation practice, through her healing practices, she still did some work through over the last 8 weeks, but what she did, she really went within. And even in the last 2 weeks, she's listed 5 properties. And because she goes, the reason why I did that is that because I worked on me. It wasn't because I changed my strategy. It wasn't because I changed my marketing. It was I worked on me, cleared up some of my crap that's allowed me to connect on a deeper level with potential vendors, and there's a result straight off the bat.
Well, what kind of? I mean, that's amazing. What kind of improvement was that on the previous version of that client?
She was listing 2 to 3 a month.
Right. So that's more than 100% growth per month.
Yep.
Wow. That's amazing.
That's amazing.
And you've had similar examples amongst other clients, yes?
Yeah, and it's beautiful to watch because it's funny. People usually come in and see me, I just need to tweak this, or I need to be accountable, or I need to work on a strategy. I say, yeah, cool. And then over time, it's like, cool, let's get your wife on the phone call. Let's get your husband in the meeting. Why? You'll notice, and then what happens is that the whole dynamite and the whole transition and the whole connection just goes to another level, because it's like what you're telling me about your partner isn't not what I'm hearing from your partner. So unless that's synced, unless that you're singing from the same page in the same book, firstly, I don't want to hear this over and over again. So we need to work on it to ensure that you're both moving forward in the right direction. And usually a lot of the time it's like, cool, I'm getting phone calls from the partners. Hey, listen, just checking in. Yep, got it. Thank you for the heads up. And so what that enables me to do, and then working with clients, it's the holistic approach to really helping them move through certain barriers there where in the past, listen, sales agents are the best salespeople to themselves, right? Hands down, right? So they can justify anything till the cows come home, even when it comes to their own stuff on their own self. And they can sell it to themselves that I don't have a problem. I'm okay. It's everyone else's problem, blah, 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 blah. So when people go stop and have a look at that, they go, far out. Is that the pattern that I've been playing for the past so many years? And when they hear it from someone who's a third party like myself, they hear it from a loved one differently. So when they hear it from a loved one, interpret it into their language.
Yeah.
And that's where I come into place, where it's like, okay, partner, you download, I want to hear your version. I will reformat it into the version that the client needs to hear it. Is that what you're saying? Yes, babe, that's what I've been saying for the last 5 years. I get it now. Right, well, now's a different conversation.
I can totally relate with that, James. I as far as when I was about to divorce my wife, it was all her fault, 100%. I'm a self-development person. I'm enlightened,
I'm fixed.
you know. I'm entertained. I'm great. I'm all good. Yeah, and what I really discovered was that it was actually all me. When I switched that lens and I changed the view that I was looking at, and it takes something to have a different lens and to take on something that you're not used to taking. And you're spot on. We are our best salesmen to ourselves. We'll sell ourselves any story we want to sell ourselves. And it wasn't until I actually went, you know what? It's not powerful for me to say it's someone else's fault. The only way I have power is to go, I'm 100% responsible here. It doesn't matter who the boss is, the franchise is, the other staff in the office are, your partner is. Doesn't matter about any of that stuff. You can have that point of view if you want. There's nothing wrong with that. But the powerful point of view is to go, I'm 100% here, and what can I do about it? And then seek out help of someone like yourself, James, a coach who can guide you through that. And it takes something. God, it takes something. I'm sure you've had some real battles with agents as well through that process. I bet it's not all smooth sailing.
Yeah, and I get people who get frustrated with me. And the reason why they get frustrated with me is my perception and my belief of a coach is not to provide the answers, but it's just to ask better questions. And so I could be, and I deemed someone who just gives an answers is more of a consultant, where I believe a coach is like, if we need to get to a destination, I could tell that person what to do to get to that destination, but they won't own it. So I need to ask a series of questions so they get the awareness and the aha moments and they own the answer themselves. And that's the art form, and that's the shift where I know where I need to get them, because I can see where the blockages are, I can see where the potential is, but sometimes they can't see it themselves. And so it's the navigation through the right questions to ask to get them to go, oh, is that what you're talking about? Could be, yeah. You might want to have a look at that.
They have to discover it. What I get from what you're saying is they have to discover it for themselves. You can't
Correct.
tell them.
Yeah.
And I also get from that is there's going to be breakdowns. There's going to be negative experiences. And almost what I'm also hearing what you're saying is if you go after those friction points and the negative experiences, that's where the big breakthroughs are for people. And if you're not having those negative experiences, you're not going to have any breakthrough.
Spot on. And that's where the learning comes, right? That's where the growth comes is pushing through. It's the whole caterpillar to butterfly approach is in order to go through and shed the skin and shed that barrier, you need to have that pressure point. You need to have that hardship. You need to have that development to then spread the wings to the fly. The story goes, if you help the caterpillar through, you're actually going to kill it because it needs to go through that struggle to come out the other side. So it's just like us. We need to sometimes, and this is where sometimes I say, you haven't hit rock bottom yet. And they go, what do you mean? Well, you're not willing to change, so you haven't had enough pain. So people will change over two things. It's either there's enough the pleasure of changing towards a goal is at a high stake, or mostly what enables people to change is pain. And people want to move away from pain. But what happens is they get from a painful point. And so what happens is they start to then get some what we call pain-free. They move away from pain, they become pain-free. But what happens if they don't get the lesson, they will go back to that painful state. So that's we call about yo-yo dieting, right? That's the same thing when we're working on our challenge and our mindset, is that if we don't work through and get those lessons and then shift the strategy in order to sustain that pleasure component and away from pain, you will go back to that painful state because you haven't actually got that lesson and you haven't implemented the strategy to move you forward.
Do you see many agents, James, going towards not being able to really be with that pain? And pain's a great word, actually, because I used the word breakdown before, and not for breakdown in terms of an emotional breakdown or anything like that, but pain is a great word to describe it. One way, if they can't be with the pain, what do you see many agents sort of trying to find a way to numb it?
Oh, yeah. I mean, like the industry is rife for numbness, and that numbness looks at multiple different aspects of the escapism, the not dealing with stuff, and that gets presented through alcohol, drug abuse, gambling, very addictive personalities really come out, and behaviors come out when people don't want to deal with it because it's a numbing sensation. It's like, oh, it's just all too hard, so let's go and hit the bottle or hit the substance abuse, and what happens is that then they go back into a further hole. And so it's what becomes a cycle, and this is a very dangerous space to be in because the carnage and the effect both on the person, the people around them, and everything else. It's crazy.
James, I imagine their results really get hit too in those situations.
Yeah, everything spirals.
Yeah.
Although it's always been of interest to me how some people manage to keep going and eke out a better than modicum of success in sales, and yet they're an absolute mess. Now, I used to think that, business, I still believe it, that business is a manifestation of your state of mind and your view on the world. But some seem remarkable high achievers, and yet they're a mess. What do you put that down to?
I think definitely there are people out there that, I'm just going to phrase it distinctly. They could have.
It can be brutal.
They could have substance abuse. They could have alcoholism. There could be many different traits. However, they could be a success because they've been doing it for a long period of time. But there's also the perception of the ego, and the ego of wanting to have that car, wanting to have that suit, or wanting to whatever it is. And so therefore, it's like they shift into a different of more of a logical component of I just got to hit the numbers, got to do the numbers, I just got to grill these vendors, I just got to go. And so what happens with that? They get into this. It becomes more of an adrenaline rush of to do deals, the catch and kills, all those kind of components. However, we don't see them when they crash and burn. And so I guarantee
Yeah.
those high achievers, they have some dark days. I know some
Yeah.
very high achievers that have had some very dark days, but we don't see that, right? You know, they could go away on their European trip, but we don't know what happens over there.
Yeah, right.
You know, we could see them, you know, be off the radar for a couple of weeks. We don't know what happens over there. And there's a lot of darkness that comes out, and just because of going so hard, and what happens is your body can only sustain so long when you're working on your adrenals. Then it starts to shut down. This is just normal, you know, physiology components of the body shutting down, because you're accessing different parts that it's the fight or flight. You know, we're not chasing from the lion anymore. We're not running from survival, but we're just running on an adrenaline, and that's what that whole energy is. And I think getting that from that substance is like, oh, I just got to go. I've got to feed that adrenaline hit, and that's where they get it. But looking on the other side, how is their health? How is their relationships? How, you know, where are that at? And if you look at a high achiever may be in, for example, GCI and commission, but how's the rest of their life shaping up?
It is a holistic equation. I mean, but what I get from hearing you, James, is that you move people from the egocentric lifestyle where it's all about me, and you move them towards we, connectedness and community, and that's been transformational, has it?
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the ego, right? The ego, people think the ego there is that bravado, but the ego there, it serves a purpose, and it's there to protect us. That's what my definition of the ego is. It's there to protect us. And how that's portrayed is that arrogance, is that bravo-ness, is that look at me, I'm not going to talk to you because I'm too good kind of component. But really, that's a mask. And when we can peel back that mask and go, well, what's really do you really need to snob that person off? Do you really need to not to talk to, like, where's that really coming from? What's really happening inside that person? And that's what I love. It's like, let's peel off that mask and let's have a talk about you, and let's have a conversation around where that is all coming and why do you feel that you need to do that? And when we get that, it's just like, I'm usually sponsored by Kleenex, because the tears that come up, and which is good. That's just emotion leaving the body. I had a client spoke to me the other day. He goes, mate, since I first started, I've never cried that much. I said, fantastic. He goes, I've never cried this much for 15 years. I said, fantastic. I said, how do you feel? He goes, the best I've ever felt. I said, exactly. I said, it's just emotion leaving the body. But what else do you feel? I go, I've got clarity. The business is the best it's ever been. The team are all on song. I feel connected. It's like, cool, great. So once again, it's looking at, let's remove the mask, let's deal with the ego, and let's have that conversation.
Yeah. You know, but I take it that it's not so straightforward, because, you know, peeling away the mask or taking away the mask there'd be a lot of resistance in that.
Yep.
And you've been, I mean, give us an example of how resistant people are in general. Yeah, okay, so in general, people are very resistant. And that's where it comes back to that willingness. In general, people are very guarded, and even more in this current climate, because we're being isolated, we've been living in fear. What happens is that the guard comes up even more. And it's like the whole protection mechanism comes into place. So this is where I don't work with everyone, and I won't work with everyone. I'll only work with those who are willing to have a look at it, because if it's not willing, I could be, you know, the guard will come up, and I call it the Great Wall of China. Or if, you know, you guys are sort of that age group like myself, where remember Get Smart days, and he walks down the end of the hallway and all the doors start shutting up. I use that analogy as well. And so the wall starts shutting up, and I can see it instantly, where the guard comes up, and I go, what just happened? They go, what? I said, you've just shut down. No, I haven't. I said, really? What's that about? And next minute, okay, cool. I said, let's have a conversation around that. But not everyone is willing. You know, there's only a small percentage of people that are really willing to go through and have a journey and to have a look at their stuff, because they, you know, that they know that they need to change, because
They may be not achieving their financial success. Their health may be, down the creek, or their loved ones, they're looking for, potential breakup. So people who have had enough pain, that's like, all right, let's have a conversation.
What are they afraid of, James? What do you see that they're actually afraid of when you know that there's that hesitation there? And there's something there. What are they really afraid of? I guess it's only at a surface level, because once you get past that, that's where you can really make the difference with them. And I'm also getting, they're never going to learn any of this stuff by listening to training, personal development stuff. This is where the coaching really becomes invaluable to them and can set their life on a whole new path. But what comes up for them when they're afraid there?
They're afraid to be vulnerable, and they're afraid to be hurt again. So there would have been an instance in their past, and this could be like, it's so subconscious, so buried in their beliefs, that little Johnny pulled a face at little Mary, and now little Mary has held that belief that she's not good enough and she's not worthy enough since the age of 5, and totally unaware of that situation, right? But now has carried that out into all her relationships, that she always goes for the bad boys because she feels that she will get attention from the bad boys, as an example, right? So it's uncovering that, like looking at where that first instances that they took on that belief and now have presented that through into their current situation in their current life. And that's where that hurt. I don't want to be hurt again.
Well, that could be 20, 30 or 40 years of just covering up patterns. And not letting that person out again, and not letting them get hurt. That's a long time. Yep,
and that's deep buried, and that comes out in patterns in their finances, in patterns of their business, patterns in how they deal with clients, patterns in their relationships, in their health. We are governed out. We're complex, but you can see people's future by looking at their past if they're not willing to work on themselves. And this is based on their own patterns and behaviors. So we need to look at we're habitual people. So what are those habits in those different areas in their life? And are they serving us, or are they actually hindering us? And that's where it's like, cool, the ones that are serving us, cool. How do we amplify that? Those who are hindering us, well, why? What's that reason? Where's that belief come from? That's you're not worthy, or you're not good enough, or you don't believe that you can do X, Y, and Z in that aspect.
Well, James, what would be the top 3 benefits or outcomes for someone coming to see you? What's been the top 3?
The top 3 is really more money, more meaning, and more freedom. And that's looking at a component on, it's multi-level. So more meaning, obviously, to help them to grow their business, right? More meaning is to have more impact in their clients, their team members, their loved ones, to really have a deeper connection and really leave behind a legacy, and really leave behind something that's really important. And the other aspect is freedom, to really have more time to spend with their loved ones, more time to really to do the things that makes the heart sing and really fulfilled. So they're the 3 areas. And then how that's played out is really getting clear on their strategy, really getting clear on what are the beliefs and behaviors that may be holding them back, and what's their plan now in order to move them forward to really achieve those goals that they're wanting to achieve.
Okay, thank you. And for someone wanting to, just get a gauge on you and how you work, where would you point them to?
We've got our website, which is jamesshort.com.au, or on our socials, which is just search Coach James Short and send me a message. Happy to have a chat.
That's great, James. And one more thing, what's your one piece of advice that you give anyone that's out there listening in on this conversation or looking at you right now? What would you say?
Is to stop. Is to take 3 deep breaths and ask better questions.
On that note, I don't have any other questions for you, James. Barry, how are you going? Would you like to ask any more questions?
I think it's brilliant, James. Learned a lot about what you provide, and I think it's a real breath of fresh air for the industry. And I think any real estate agent listening to this should at least pick up the phone and have a conversation with James, because I hid for many years behind cassettes and then into CDs about training programs, and now it's all audible things. And there's nothing like one-on-one, face-to-face conversation with somebody who has as skilled as James is to peel back the layers. And once you get those layers peeled back and a whole new world opens up for them, just don't know what's possible for them. So, I really acknowledge you, James, for what you do.
Yes.
Thank you very much, guys.
I mean, seriously, I don't know anyone who would say no to all three of those points you just raised: more money, more meaning, more freedom. Who would say no to all three of those? So see James, get onto his website and book a time to chat with him, because you're well worth it, James. Thank you very much for your time.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks, James.